Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and on the first half of this episode, I'm talking to you about some of the big takeaways from the 74th FIFA Congress, and then we're going to talk about the U.S. men's national team roster that will be taking on both Brazil and Colombia in friendlies in June. Obviously, a not final Copa America roster, but probably of the 27 guys, I think we can assume a good chunk of those, if not all of them, minus one, will be representing the Stars and Stripes this summer at home in the Copa America tournament. But like I said, before we get into that, before I talk with our good friend Thomas about that, I just wanted to run down some of the big takeaways that I had from the FIFA Congress that concluded last week. Now, obviously, the big news item that came out of this was that Brazil wins the bid to host the 2027 Women's World Cup. Brazil will be the 9th country to host a Women's World Cup and the first South American country to host. This is obviously really cool news for American soccer fans specifically because Brazil is in our time zone, so we're not worried about, waking up early or staying up late to watch our team play. We're not worried about taking off work in the middle of the day to catch a game. But also, this is important because South America has been a bubbling, boiling stew for women's soccer for a while. We know the Brazilian team has been very good and been one of the U.S. women's national team's foremost rivals throughout history. Obviously, they made that final back in 2007, beating the U.S. along the way. But the support from the Federation has waxed and waned, and honestly, mostly waned for the Brazilian women's team throughout their history. And that story kind of rings true for a lot of the other countries in South America for their women's national team programs. That said, in 2023, we saw a exciting, young, and tenacious Colombia team make a good run down under and proved that a little bit of investment in the women's game can go a long way. Now, Brazil won this bid overall because I think they had a better, I don't want to say business plan necessarily, but definitely a better overall package to offer FIFA. They had a 4.0 out of 5 score, and they beat out the Belgium, Germany, Netherlands bid that had a 3.7 score. So a significant difference between the two. One of the big things that I think led to this was the stadiums. And something that was mentioned multiple times throughout the bid books and the executive summary that I read that's available on FIFA's website was the size of the stadiums and also the fit of the stadium. So obviously, the 10 stadiums that will be used for this Women's World Cup in 2027, most of those were purpose-built for the Men's World Cup back in 2014 that Brazil hosted. But then you also have some of the cathedrals of the game, like the Maracanã, which, hosting a Women's World Cup final would be a crowning achievement for that glorious facility. They did beat the Belgium, Germany, Netherlands bid 119-78. This was, as Gianni Infantino said, the most comprehensive bidding process in history. And in fact, this was the first time that it was decided by an open vote of the Congress. The overall bid included 3 submitted bids and a South Africa bid that was withdrawn before the evaluation process. As you remember, the U.S. and Mexico presented a bid for the 2027 Women's World Cup. They withdrew that about a month ago, as they said, to focus on 2031. So really, FIFA Congress only had 2 bids to consider. That said, the USA-Mexico Newer Heights bid was evaluated by FIFA and actually had some pretty decent scores. But I think overall, they realized that their time was not now, and hopefully they can focus on a 2031 winning bid. To that point, the 2031 host will be decided next year in 2025. This is the longest run-up that I think FIFA's given a host country to plan for the tournament. I know for sure that we will know where the next tournament takes place when 2027 runs around. So having 6 years to plan and prepare and hype a tournament will be very instrumental for this tournament that, as we saw in 2023, has a lot of potential from a commercial standpoint, but also just from a fan attendance standpoint. And again, that goes back to why I think Brazil ended up winning. Not only are other stadiums overall newer and nicer, they are bigger. The lowest capacity would be about 40,000. And for the first time I can remember in FIFA history, there were specific mentions in the Belgium, Germany, Netherlands bid about stadiums not being fit to size capacity wise for the tournament stage, if you will. Obviously, some of the Belgium, Germany, Netherlands bids, the Belgium, Netherlands bid specifically, those two countries, their largest stadiums are capping at 55,000, and most of the stadiums they would be using are somewhere below 35,000. So that's why they had to bring in Germany to kind of boost their overall stadium capacity average. But overall, the 13 stadiums they had did not compare to the overall average that the Brazilian stadiums could have. The Brazil stadiums also did have a little bit of a plan to sell tickets in a kind of staged process. So, maybe you only open up the lower bowl, and once that sells out, you sell the upper bowl. But the potential to sell 40,000 tickets to 45,000 to 50 to 65 to 70 to 80,000 at the Americana is something that I know FIFA relishes. And again, if you want to give FIFA some credit, they've realized the potential that the 2023 Women's World Cup showed. Maybe they're trying to capitalize on that and host this tournament on bigger stages. Also, FIFA said it will be tough on racism. I know we've never heard that before. They did lay out 5 action areas for a quote global stand against racism. So there is a plan in place. Some of those are local laws, some of those are procedures and sanctions within FIFA's abilities and local league abilities. But overall, FIFA just saying, hey, we're going to try to take a stand against racism and actually take action, empower the officials running our games to maybe, I don't know if they're going to, you know, get rid of it or actually get rid of someone who is a racist, but do something more than just what we've seen around the world, which is a lot of nothing, to be quite honest. Gianni Infantino also brushed away complaints about the match volume that players are facing. He's not wrong. He said that, FIFA doesn't schedule these matches that a lot of these players are enduring. Even the international matches, FIFA is not necessarily the sanctioning body of them. It is, FIFA is just, how do I put this? They're giving them the stage, but they're just keeping it open. Maybe the lights are on, but the international calendar, the international fixtures, most of those are decided, between two countries. So it's not FIFA's fault, it's not Infantino's fault, but I do think it's a little sheepish FIFA where they could use some of their resources and research to kind of help set standards or provide guidelines or insight into the match volume and that effect on player health and safety. That said, FIFA did approve a change to the women's international match calendar for years 2026 through 2029 that eliminated the September match window. So, we've had this talk about match congestion. Well, FIFA said no international friendlies in the September match window. This will, quote, provide more opportunities for rest and recovery for players throughout the calendar. I also think that FIFA should consider this on the men's side because a lot of, FIFA's decisions are based on the European soccer calendar, and that European soccer calendar does extend to a lot of other places in the world, to be honest. But, when you have players who go through a preseason training camp, start their league season, and then take an abrupt break for, an international window, I understand that is jarring. And we do have, at least on the women's side, we have some science that shows that girls are, women are more likely to get hurt coming back from or immediately getting to international call ups. So, maybe that downtime in travel is one of the reasons. I'm not entirely sure what the takeaway is from that, but important to note that that is one of the issues. So, FIFA did address that by eliminating the September match window in years 2026 through 2029. And also in women's soccer news, FIFA did approve a calendar that includes a FIFA Women's Club World Cup. This will come January through February 2026 and held every 4 years. Additionally, FIFA will host an additional women's club competition organized in non World Cup years, going from 2027 on. What that is, not quite sure, but as you've noticed, probably that there is now a CONCACAF Women's Champions Cup that is hopefully leading into, as we see more of this, leading into a Women's Club World Cup. And that's a good thing. The women's club game has taken off a lot in probably the past decade. And so being able to reward players and clubs for their success at a truly internationals tournament probably going to result in some financial gains for FIFA and the clubs, and most importantly, the players. The next Congress, as I said, is in the US in 2025. We do not know where. And then in 2026, there will be a Congress in either Canada, Mexico, or the United States, depending on where they choose. But as tradition, the World Cup year is held in where, well, the World Cup is. That is all I have from the FIFA Congress that just wrapped up. So I'm going to catch my breath, take a break, and on the other side, I am going to talk to Thomas, aka US Keeper, about the men's roster that just dropped this week. Alrighty, welcome back to Soccer for Us. And now joining me to talk about the men's roster for the June 2024 friendlies and probably Copa America is your friend and mine, Thomas, aka US Keeper. Thomas, we have 27 players on this roster. It is exciting that Copa America is right around the corner, but we do have a long training camp and a couple friendlies before that.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's really been a while since we've had, a buildup of something of this nature, right? Usually, this June window has been used for, a Nations League or pretty much Nations Leagues for a while, and then that leads into a Gold Cup, which is a completely different roster. But now we've got a long duration here where we're going to have, the core group together, and I think that's a huge opportunity and very exciting. From a fan's perspective, to be able to kind of ingest these almost 2 months, really, if from now till the end of Copa America, and hopefully they can get the most out of it. So it's exciting.
Yeah, Copa America, obviously, if we're still in it, will run through June 17. So hopefully it's a very long tournament. And then that rolls right into the Olympics, which start the next week. You mentioned a great term there that I think we need to remember while evaluating this roster is the core group. And I don't think the core group has changed too much. I do think it has solidified around the edges. I don't think it's quite as squishy. But I think where a lot of your and I concerns lie in the fringes. And I think it's fair to still criticize that. I think we need to realize that some of these roster positions, while you could argue that maybe better players should be there, hopefully they're not actually seeing the field, because even if they do see the field, a lot has gone wrong to get to that point.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think what it does show us while we have better depth than we've had with the national team, it's still not there in every position, right? So we have, because of injury or just because of just the quality that we have at certain positions, It's just not where it needs to be, where you can have next person up mentality and be like, yep, you're in, Scally. This is yours to lose, right? You need to go out there and do that, but who's after him, right? And so who's the next person up after him? And I think that's where, some of that depth hasn't really been taken. Again, we'll discuss it, but there's definitely, some gaps in some of these areas that, is again, when you get to the fringes of the roster, I think then there's a little bit more anticipate, opinions behind it. And then when you add three more roster positions that really weren't there, then it's like even more scrutinized, in terms of saying, hey, well, we have three more players, but so who would the three, well, 26, yeah, three more players, and who were the three that wouldn't have made it, right? If it was only 23 players. So it's, a guessing game for all of us.
Well, and important to note that this roster has 27 guys, and only 26 can be named to that Copa America squad. And then furthermore, there will not be a full 26 on every match day roster. So yeah, a lot to kind of break down here. So let's just start with position groups and go one by one. So the goalkeepers are Ethan Horvath from Cardiff City, Sean Johnson from Toronto FC, and Matt Turner from Nottingham Forest. Now, I don't think Turner or Horvath are unexpected. I think all three of us had those two guys as our top two on the depth chart. Sean Johnson was not on any of our depth charts, and he gets included here. I personally feel like this is just and Greg Berhalter almost said as much in his press conference. Well, he's been at he's been at the World Cup, and he's a good guy to have in the locker room. And while that may be true, am I wrong for trying to find just the next MLS guy to be the third option for tournaments like this? Do we need Sean Johnson to bring that valuable experience to Copa America this summer?
It's really it's an interesting question because we have a unique situation, right, with the Olympics. So is Sean John? He obviously doesn't trust the other Calendar or Salantano, right? He just doesn't trust them in a situation. But that being said, if you're getting to that point, then of using your third keeper or any of your last, not keeper for sure, you're in a tough spot, right? Then things are not going well. Most likely because of injury, that we've seen. So it's so pretty rare to use that. So, who would he trust in that situation? Look, in his limited time with the national team, Sean Johnson has done quite well, in goal. And obviously, there's, he hasn't had that many caps. I think it's 11 or 12. It's really not many. I think most recently was last summer at the Gold Cup was his last one. So you have to evaluate, that comfortability. And I think with Greg, we talk a lot about players earning that stock with Greg. Sean Johnson's, clearly one of those players, and he earned that in Greg's eyes, and Greg comfortable with him, so he's going to go with him. I don't think he trusts the other two MLS keepers, and I don't think you're going to see any of the young ones come into this camp because I think they've got the Olympics to kind of focus on there. So.
Well, obviously, yes, the Olympics are a big key because neither Schulte or Slonina will be part of this roster, especially when the Olympics team will be playing a friendly in June. But I guess I'm just wondering, at what point can we say, okay, can we move past the dude who you have trust in, but you have to start building trust in other people? And that's where I felt like, even if it was Calendar, who we all three agree is meh, I think that it would have just been better to move on to someone different. No offense to Sean Johnson, he went to my rival high school, but at the same time, it's just I don't know why we can't move on.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way though. Like if Greg doesn't think that Calendar or Celentano are going to be that third keeper, then why even bring him in, right? I guess I could kind of see that. Like, why even bother? Don't give him any false hope of anything. Bring in a guy that that you maybe trust and is a good team player, and you just want to maybe give one. I mean, I would have thought the World Cup was that, but give one last big tournament to, or even last year's Gold Cup, which I was surprised he was on, right? Give one last opportunity for this player to kind of experience something, and then let him go after Copa America. Because I think we're going to have to see that with some of these players over the next years after Copa America and the Olympics are done, right? And so the transition of those younger players will start to feed into the national team, once we get, through this summer. And I think maybe that would, to me, would be the only real consideration uh, in that decision. So, I mean, I'm ready to move on, but I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not excited about the other two MLS keepers that we keep talking about. I'm just not excited about them either. So, I'm if you were going to bring a younger guy in, then maybe, but I don't think that was in the cards for this group. So I think that's the reason for the decision. So, but to your point, yeah, I'm done with him. I think he's good. What is he?
He's
Gonna be
34.
he's yeah
He's going to be 35. Yeah.
35 here at the end of the month. So okay, so let's
Yeah.
you know say thank you and give you one last tournament apparently, and
It's
all
just,
good.
I know it sounds harsh, but I feel like this tournament, this Copa America tournament, is a unique preparatory event for the 2026 World Cup, and the fact that we're hosting it. It is a major international event. It is not freaking Copa America or Gold Cup. It is Copa America. It is a real tournament with a lot of better teams, an elevated level of competition, and certainly an elevated historical level of competition. And I just feel like now is the time to find one of those guys, I guess. At least, you don't know for a goalkeeper, especially a lot of these young guys, where they'll be in 2 years. I mean, we all bank on Slonina being great. We don't know what 2 years is going to do. So I just feel like why not find if Calendar or Celentano can be that locker room guy. But that's enough talking about a third string goalkeeper. It's just one of those things that when we have so much already set in stone, we're going to have to argue about the fringes. Let's move on to the defenders. There are 9 of them. You have Cameron Vickers from Celtic, Christopher Lund from Palermo, Mark McKenzie from Genk, Shaq Moore from Nashville, Tim Reen from Fulham, Chris Richards from Crystal Palace, Anthony Jedi Robinson from Fulham, Miles Robinson from Cincinnati, and Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach. We'll talk about Shaq Moore in a second, but I think the other player that people are a little shocked isn't here is Austin Trusty. But I got to be honest, I think Mark McKenzie and Miles Robinson are better center backs, and then you include Cameron Carter-Vickers as well, and still having Tim Ream. I don't know where he fits in, and it's very likely one of these center backs even will get dropped for the Gold Cup roster in full.
Yeah, I mean it's
Copa America roster in full.
Yeah. I think they use one of the extra ones on a center back because I'm thinking Greg's going to probably try a 3-back. Or something of that nature. But look, Trusty, he's definitely making his way up the piece of it, of the depth chart. I just don't think Greg trusts them. I just don't think he trusts them, and I think that's kind of a key for this group here. And I think again the next 2 years heading into the World Cup, I think he's going to get some chances to play. But I just don't think Greg trusts him, and I think maybe he's a replacement for not a replacement, but maybe when Ream phases out, which I think he needs to, maybe he's the player that has that opportunity to fill that spot because he's plays on the same side of the field and all these other typical things in general. So we will see. I think Ream has to be phased out at some point, and I think Trusty has an opportunity to maybe take that spot.
I got to be honest. I think this might be an opportunity to truly phase out Ream. Now we'll see what happens in the friendlies. It very well could be that Greg starts them at both. But you have a healthy Cameron Carter-Vickers. You have Miles Robinson playing well. You have Mark McKenzie back in the fold. You obviously have Chris Richards, who I think we all think is the number 1 center back. So now is the time to start seeing what this center back pairing can look like without Tim Ream, be it CCV and Richards or Miles and Richards, 2 guys who, to me, complement what Chris Richards does very well. But yeah, it is interesting that there are so many center backs, 5, but not an extra right back. And I think that goes to show me personally that the options just aren't there when Greg evaluates the pool in totality. And he just, I guess, feels most comfortable with Shaq Moore.
Yeah, I mean, we can go down the different options for right back and maybe probably why they're not there. Maybe I mean they're all look right now. It's a banged up position, right? You're looking at players that just are coming back, including Shaq Moore, right? He's only come back for
Yeah.
3 matches and he
He
hasn't
got
played,
subbed out of the match I just watched him play in. Yeah.
right? So he's not playing a full either. So I think again, I I'll say it again. You'll probably hear it a lot. It's a player. Greg has earned a lot of stock with Greg. He went to the World Cup. It's that weird experiencing. And this is my problem with. It's always been my problem with Greg. He can't let go. Like
No,
he can say
he
what he
cannot.
wants. He could say, look, you could look at Fossey. You could look at Dwan Jones. You could look, Yedlin's
Right,
but like
Buchanan.
right, exactly right. You can look at any of these players and say, okay, why not them over this, right? Because they're all kind of in the same situation. They're all coming off injury. And the thing is, the run up is large on this. So it's possible he gets injured in camp and
Yeah.
then he's just replaced, right? With another player. I mean, I personally, I would have liked to seen Greg bring in another one of these right backs into camp to give them that opportunity to, kind of fight it out a little bit too, right? Because it's okay to, in my opinion, cut a couple players from this camp because this is, again, this is a separate international window. This is, it's a June window, so you have, that flexibility in the run up to be able to do those things heading into Copa America, which is nice. But I think really it's kind of a little bit of a missed opportunity for that. Unless Greg's like, look, if these players are healthy and we're not seeing it from Shaq, we'll just yank them because this is not the final roster necessarily. They have until June
It
12th,
is
I
not.
believe, right, to make
June
that.
15th now,
Is it?
actually,
Oh,
because
they
of
moved
the
it.
announced 26 players. Yes.
Oh, okay, so June 15th.
They gave you 3 extra days to find 3
Right.
extra guys.
So they have through the Brazil match to make that decision and really evaluate the health of all these players, right? Because this is not just the right back position. So, yeah, it's a little disappointing, but and that's where this is where Greg really frustrates me, right? He just like can't let go a little bit of these sorts of
Yep.
things, and everyone's saying it. So again, mind you, we're complaining about a fringe player, a position, but kind of a position that's a little bit more vulnerable without Dest.
Well, and that's exactly the issue is if you're going to bring a second right back, you might as well bring the best one you can possibly find. And to me, I still think Tim Weah is a way better option at right back, or Weston McKennie is a way better option at right back. But I understand bringing 2 actual right backs to a Copa America tournament. Brian McBride praised Shaq Moore's 1v1 defending. It's a quote that came out recently, which I guess that's a plus, right? Like in theory, I just don't buy that because there are better 1v1 defenders, and technically Reggie Cannon is a better 1v1 defender than Shaq Moore when you look at statistically speaking.
Yeah,
It just is what it is.
Yeah, Cannon was the other one that I was forgetting there, and he just hasn't played a lot recently, but
Yeah.
He is with the club and he's healthy. So like and again, he is a player that Greg had there, but again, it's just this weird. Yeah, McBride's comment to me is he's just almost justifying his decision at the World Cup, saying, hey,
Yeah.
he's a player that we probably discussed and made a decision bringing 4 right backs to the World Cup, right? Like I'll go back to that. Like to me, you can justify that any way you want. My eyes tell me a lot of what the story is, right, when it comes to any of these players, but specifically more and what he's been doing over the last couple of years, which really hasn't impressed me, or anyone for that matter. So yeah, that I think he's just trying to save face for Greg a little bit on that. You know, buddies helping out buddies, I guess, in terms of that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
we can read between the lines, pretty well when it comes to those sorts of comments and feedback from former GMs of the USMNT.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure where this player would necessarily fit in, but Kevin Paredes not included in this, and Greg very clearly stated that he is going to be a part of the Olympic camp, saying that they just weren't sure where he would get minutes. Obviously, if you look at left back, where he's not starting over Jedi, and if Jedi's healthy, he's playing 90 minutes of every game, as we saw even in the 2022 World Cup. Christopher Lund, clearly a reliable enough left back to Greg. So Paredes not there. I don't know if there's any other defender that I outside of Paredes that I necessarily thought was snubbed, and I don't even think Paredes was snubbed.
Yeah, I had him on my initial list almost as a more wishful thinking type of situation, but I kind of knew better. He really belonged with
Yeah,
the Olympic team.
I think if you were to list the 23 to 26 best players, he should be on a roster. But I think when you evaluate, like, because I mean, I would even put right now Brian Reynolds up there, but both Reynolds and Paredes can go play almost every minute they want at the Olympics. And Paredes at a left wing position where he's played for Wolfsburg all season. So I get it. Oh well. Midfielders, 8 midfield players. We have Tyler Adams from now Bournemouth. Supposedly he hasn't played for them very much. Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis. Luca de la Torre from Celta Vigo. Weston McKennie from Juventus. Yunus Musa from Milan. Gio Reyna from Nottingham Forest for the time being. Malik Tillman from PSV and his brother, Timmy Tillman from LAFC. Let's talk about Tyler Adams for a second. He has been in and out of health, in and out of form, in and out, on and off the pitch. He's here. Greg very clearly said that we have a long run up to get him healthy, which I think is the goal. But it's got to be concerning that the dude has been one level of unhealthy for the past, that seems like 3 years.
Yeah, that it's becoming an unfortunate trend with him. It kind of reminds me a little bit of John O'Brien back in the 2000 range. You know, great player when he's there, great when he's a club, just provides so much to the team, but just can't stay healthy. And you know when it's needed the most, right? And so that I think that's the I mean, we're seeing that with Adams a little bit. He's just having these constant, I don't know if they're nagging injuries or what they are, but they're just constant injuries that are really starting to impact decision making in terms of what Greg needs to do to bring these certain players into camps and into the fold, because you can't rely on him anymore. You have to be able to have your be option B ready to go, whatever that is. If it's Johnny, if it's Musa, filling in for that sixth position. And it's unfortunate because Tyler is, when he's healthy and in form, he's really such a valuable leader on the field, great player to have. So it's frustrating. I'm getting more and more, frustrated with that as a fan. It kind of is what it is, but I'm okay bringing him into camp. I think Greg's point is a good one. I will say he didn't really backfill the way he needed to in the roster to in the situation where he's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be available and who's going to fill him in. So I think that's, again, another weird Greg move, when you're doing these things, because what does it cost you to bring another player or two to this camp, right? Because it's rolling over to Copa America. So I guess that's why it's a little bit of a head scratcher to
I'm with you. I'm a little surprised another deep lying midfielder wasn't brought in. Who that midfielder would be? Maybe Leonard Maloney.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious choice based on what we kind of expect to see from the Olympic roster. If you're saying there's going to be no holdovers, and it's kind of feeling like that's going to be the case from either roster, I think he's really the one that stands out to me as being, that option. I mean, if you look at the provisional roster from the Nations League, there's not a lot of other options on there. I think Acosta was on that. And I don't think he's someone that we want to see in camp ever again. So your options again, I think, are somewhat limited. For someone who can play that, that double pivot, or direct six role for the men.
Yeah, I do think Maloney would have been the dude to call in, and I think there's reason to do that. I mean, he has been playing Bundesliga minutes. He's been a relatively reliable player for Heidenheim. And it's more just about, like you said, to make sure that if Tyler gets hurt or something happens, that we have a guy in camp ready to go. And I'm with you. It's a little curious. But we do have Johnny Cardoso, and we do have Yunus Musa and Weston McKinney. So I feel like from those three, you'll be able to find a guy who can play as the holding midfielder. And it's worth noting that, while Panama won't sit deep, neither Panama nor Bolivia are, in my opinion, going to require a fire putting out central midfielder,
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's, I think that's where some of these decisions come into play a little bit. Greg's like, well, maybe we don't need Adams to play that much. He can kind of, ease his way into the team or whatever. Because none of these players can be on minutes restrictions. Let's be very clear about that. We cannot have that like we had in Nations League. We can't have minutes restrictions. These players have to be healthy, in form for these tournaments, and be able to play whatever they need to play to be able to do this. And so, to me, if that comes into play, I mean, I guess the only technical option you would do, you would start him, play as 45, because if he can't play more than 45, then he shouldn't be on the roster, right? And kind of like they did, in the Nations League. But you have to, you can't have those restrictions on you. Like, from a manager's perspective, you've got to be able to navigate your roster, with the fluidity that's needed in a tournament like this. So,
it is interesting too. We got another Tillman brother in, and while I don't think it's unfair to say he's had a pretty good season in MLS, I think it's a little shocking. Timmy, whichever form that you want to use, is on this training camp roster. I think it is a little curious. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying it's curious.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, I don't think Greg would ever tell tales or anything, but I mean, look, I think to play with a sibling at any stage in your soccer career is a very cool thing. So maybe they're just giving him that opportunity to play with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I will say, from attacking midfielder, it's a position that we really don't have a replacement for Reyna if he's not playing there. Malik does certain things that are very helpful and in the attack, but it's not what Reyna does. And so maybe there's different, just a different thought. I mean, I don't know who else that player would be, right, when you look at it, because I mean, I don't think there's another player, again, that's not probably going to go to the Olympics that would really fit into that attacking midfielder position that's was kind of on that Nations League roster. I don't really see a player that jumps out necessarily. So you bring in a couple of these other players, I have less issue with it, but I do question it as well.
I think it's fair to just wonder why he was the chosen one. I do think that if you're looking at this needing to make a cut, he seems like an obvious guy who won't be making the roster. Also, because you're carrying 8 midfielders, which is a little bit more than you normally would into a tournament.
Yeah, that's true. I think, again, maybe just threw him a bone to bring him to camp with his brother so they could have that experience together.
And again, it's not like he's playing poorly in MLS, so it's not like it's a bad player call up. But it's just, I don't think he raises our ceiling or our floor, to be quite honest. So, oh well. Let's move to the last group, the forwards. 7 guys called up. Brendan Aronson back in the squad. He was left off the Nations League roster and then called back in after injury. So he is back. Folarin Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Tim Weah, and Haji Wright. So let's just start off with the very first thing here. It's that we have Balogun, Pepi, Sargent, all 3 in camp, plus Haji Wright. So that's 4 guys who can play the striker position. Greg did say that Haji is basically a left winger, which I get. Again, we discussed this on the last episode, that is a position of lack of talent for what we had evaluated. There's not a whole lot of guys there out on the wing, but 4 strikers, and really the big 3 that we've all been watching for the past couple of years. going to be interesting to see who actually wins out on the starting job.
Yeah, it's gonna be a battle. It's a very interesting thing because um, I think he's right on with the Haji thing. He but again in a
Especially
situation,
in this point in time. I mean, I think right now it makes so much sense to have Haji be a left winger
yeah,
when you look at where he's playing for club and how well he's performing.
yeah, it slots. I think it slots in just fine with that. I think where I still get concerned is what does Greg do? Is he going to move way back to the right wing back or right back position, right? And so then that leaves you a little bit more in a situation where you
Yeah.
kind of maybe have a little bit more of a gap of another winger that could be
Yeah.
needed, right? And so that's kind of where I'm like questioning that.
Well, that's where Malik and Reina might come into play,
Yeah, I mean you
honestly.
have that flexibility where they can do that. The battle is going to be interesting because I mean Sargent is dealing with an ankle thing, but again the run up's long, so I think he's going to give him that chance.
Yeah.
And that I mean, these guys have all had their moments during the season where they've been on fire, and right now I don't think any one of them has really, been putting goals away here in the last couple months. So it's gonna be. I would love to be at the training. I'll just say that because it's gonna be fun watching these guys battle. I mean, I think Balogun gets to start, you know, in general, but who's the first off
Yeah.
the bench is Pepe's proven to do great things off the bench and provide those goals. And but I think Sargent can also fill that role very well. So and Sargent can play in the wing a little bit too, right? I think that's where we've
Absolutely.
seen him do that a
And
little
to be
bit
honest,
too. And
Pepe's played not quite as a winger, but played out on the left. I mean, kind of a winger, but he's played out on the left side too. So, we definitely have that versatility, which is good.
yeah, the two striker thing we've seen recently in the last in the Nations League. Greg went to that late. And maybe you see that. Maybe again, this is my hope with Greg, right? You have a big window of time, right? Figure stuff out, try things. I would be
Mhm.
shocked if they're not going to get a friendly in here. That's a closed door thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Try three backs with two strikers. Try these different things in here and use that opportunity because you have a pretty good quality talent pool of strikers. I want to see what they can do and how they can work because you've got to figure out how to get Balogun the ball because he's such a creative striker and he hasn't been able to do that. And this is where the rubber meets the road for Greg. They've got so much. He's got a runaway here with these players for longer than he's had them in one camp ever. Right? We didn't have that opportunity at the World Cup because of just a short time frame. He's got this. If he can't figure it out, he's got to go, in my opinion, because he's had the chances, and to this point, he hasn't really done a lot with it.
He's met, I don't want to say expectations. He's met the benchmarks, and that's about it, right?
Yeah,
This is a great opportunity, as you mentioned, for him to, as someone who loves to teach a system and install a system, a great chance to do that. This is basically a pre-training camp for Copa America that I mean, this is longer than any other tournament that I can recall in recent memory. Certainly longer than the 2022 World Cup. So, if they're calling in and coming in, within the next week, they're going to get in before June even starts, and the first match is June 23rd. So, um, he'll have a lot of time with them. I agree. I do think that this signals to me that Ricardo Pepi is not going to be on that Olympic roster, mainly because I mean, granted, I don't know what PSV is thinking, but I doubt PSV would have released him for these friendlies, plus maybe Copa, without saying, no, he's not playing Olympics. I don't think they would release him for these friendlies and then go to the Olympics. I don't know for sure. I think this signals that Rico is going to be considered for the Copa roster and not for the Olympics.
yeah, he's a unique piece because he's still under 23 too, right? So you
Yep.
would have to use an overage player. So that's the convenience of having that option, right,
Yeah.
with him.
Which
So
is the only reason I've suggested it is
yeah,
purely because he still is under the age of 23. And it's like, well, we don't really have a great striker option. So
right.
why don't we play the good striker who's under the age of 23?
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I don't think we've seen it. I think they've pretty much settled on the core group for the Olympics as well. And but I think he belongs here too, right? Like he,
Oh,
he's
absolutely.
he's earned. I think he's earned it from what he's done with it nationally. I think he's had a good season. I think he needs to, maybe have a little bit of a showcase. I don't know if he's going back to PSV or not. It doesn't really feel like that's going to happen, but I think he has earned that, and especially with the expanded roster and kind of where things fall. I think he's definitely You've got to stick here and and hopefully do some great things in whatever role he gets pulled into.
Well, we did talk earlier about the lack of winger options. I think, as you mentioned on the pre-show Google Doc, it's a little weird that Alejandro Zendejas is not part of this. I don't know if he's necessarily better than Haji. He certainly isn't scoring at the same clip, but I mean, he's been pretty good for Copa America this year. They're obviously having a very successful season, and to me, if you're trying to find another attacking option and a guy who actually can play winger, he's right there.
Yeah, again, these are the head scratchers that we're talking about 3 additional players, in my opinion, that you could have brought into this camp. Bring a 30 camp, man roster into camp. I don't think there's any restrictions on that. Bring them in. Let them fight it out, right? Let them fight it out. Get this group, because really, when you look at it, that's probably the core group, right? When you look at the
Mhm.
core group of 30 players, right? 30-ish players that are fighting out for these roles, and he has had a good season, and you hate to do that. That being said, he has not shown very well with the U.S. He hasn't really had a great opportunity with the A group to do that. So I think that's part of it too. He's not a player, I think, that can take it on his shoulders and do it himself. So it's unfortunate, but there's always gonna, no matter how big the roster is, there's always gonna be those handful of players that fall on the fringe that were like, well, he could have chose this player over that player, right? And and who knows? All these guys need to be ready, right? Because
Yeah.
while it's a long camp, injuries happen in training and leading up to stuff. So it wouldn't be the first time that we see players replaced before the tournament. So
Yeah, that's a great point that obviously, again, the final roster for Copa America not due until June 15th. So we have 3-4 weeks almost for that to to be decided. And who knows what can happen between now and then. Um, any other thoughts on the forwards that we have here?
no, I think again, most of this roster kind of you know decides itself. There's not a huge amount of surprises here. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess when you look at the other piece of Aronson, but Aronson kind of he's got Greg stock and he's earned it, and the extra he's earned that extra Ross position. So I think that's he slots in very nicely with what Greg wants.
It's a great point. Lots of great points made by you on this episode. Last question for you. Obviously, we have games against Colombia and Brazil, but overall, how much are you balancing, if you're Greg, trying stuff out versus honing what you already have installed? You have 180 minutes, so how much, what percentage are you looking at for trying stuff versus refining?
Well, I mean, getting out of the group, you're gonna likely be facing one of these two unless something catastrophic happens in the group. It's possible. I mean, we've seen it. It wouldn't be a huge surprise, but I think I would be shocked if they both don't get out of the group. But
I would be shocked if all three of us don't get out of a group. That's for
right,
sure.
right. So I mean, so there's a very good chance that we're gonna play one of these teams in the first knockout stage of the tournament. And what I wouldn't want to do, and I'm not a fan of playing teams that you're likely to play, but the schedule is what it is. But I think you have to go out there and try stuff. I think you have to go ahead and say, look, we're gonna put our number one group out here, core group, for the first half, and we're gonna try 3 backs, 2 strikers, whatever it is, right? We're gonna try this against a top tier team, and that's the thing. This is where Greg has to try different stuff. He can't go through Berhalter ball. It's tired. It doesn't work. It's. I don't care if it's boring. I don't care about any of those things. I want results, and I don't want to get like I don't want the team to burn themselves out against these matches to get a result, and then when we play them, we get blown out for nothing. Like save your secret sauce for when the games matter. So I think that's why you have to kind of go into this, say, hey, we're going to try some new things. I don't expect them to win either one of these friendlies, frankly, and I think that's okay. But if they lose and they do the same crap, I'm going to be mad. I want to see something new. I want to see something, try to get creativity out of this group and work with different combinations. Hey, try try the midfield combination, try the center back combination, see what's going to work.
Yeah.
That's why you have these friendlies. I mean, as much as I want to win, it's okay if you don't in the growth and of this group against top tier teams.
Yeah, I think to your point, I don't care about winning these friendlies as much as I care about looking good with multiple looks, which is a little repetitive, but you're going to need to try to get your plan A as good as possible, right? Because you want plan A to be plan A. But this is a great opportunity with outside of Dest, the best players you're going to get together to try some things. And because you don't have Dest, there's a good chance to try things that, if that ever happens in the future. I mean, you're going to have to deal without Dest for the length of the tournament, possibly even looking at, Nations League into November, because unfortunately he has that type of a knee injury. So, I do want to see some sort of alternative system, formation, pattern of play from Greg that isn't, well, we'll just put Joe Scally in and hopefully he gets it.
Yeah, and that's where I don't have confidence in Greg to do this, right? As I just don't, because I mean, I think about how would you implement just a formation change, right? That again, you have the offensive formation, then the defensive formation, right? When you kind of look at that, simplistically, there's two different kind of formations depending on what side of the ball you're on. Is Greg able to make something that's simple, right? Greg is about complex as they come, So can he find a simple formation, a simple system to be able to try to execute this? And technically, he kind of has 4 matches really to kind of test that, right?
Yeah.
Because you should be able to put in any system and beat Panama and Bolivia, right? Like you should, but I mean, we've seen with Greg,
Yeah.
he can barely beat Jamaica, right? And so,
Yeah.
so that's where I don't think he's got the nerve, right? I don't think he's got the nerve to do that. When you see some of his roster selections, he's going back to the same old, C squad player when maybe you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you take a different chance. Maybe you give someone else a different opportunity.
Well, we know he is slow to let go. We know he's also slow to try new things. So, that said, again, we have 2 friendlies coming up. The first on Saturday, June 8th against Colombia, and the second on Tuesday, June 12th against Brazil. The Brazil match down in Orlando seems to be selling pretty well. So that's good to hear. We'll be talking next time about the U.S. women's national team roster that was dropped today on Tuesday. So not going to try to meld 2 roster discussions into one episode, but be on the lookout for that as well. Thomas, thank you for joining me on this episode. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at USKeeper. Do you have anything coming out soon or anything you need to plug?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it out. I don't know if I'll get it on time. I'm working on an Olympic piece. Kind of a little bit of a history and just a little bit of a roster opportunity. If I don't, I might have to drop the roster side of it because I'm still trying to work on that. But yeah, I'm just
History is good.
There. Yeah, a little bit of history, nothing crazy. Just kind of a glimpse back. So
yeah, love it. Well, again, thank you for joining me. Thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Soccer For Us Pod and support the show at buymeacoffee.com/soccerforuspod. I'm Bart. I'm out.